You know that feeling when you just know something, but then the science steps in and says, well, actually, it's a bit more complicated. Today, we're diving into one of those really fascinating areas, the atopic march. For decades, this concept described, well, a seemingly predictable progression of allergic conditions, often starting with eczema in infancy and leading to asthma and allergic rhinitis later in life. But, as research evolves, our understanding is getting richer. It's revealing a much more intricate picture.
That's absolutely right. And for this deep dive, our mission really is to unpack what the atopic march is, how our understanding has, radically shifted from that simple linear path to a complex web of what we now call atopic multimorbidity.
Okay.
We want to explore the surprising underlying mechanisms and then look at the cutting-edge strategies being researched to intervene and maybe even prevent these conditions.
And to guide us, we've pulled from a stack of recent review articles, studies. Some as current as 2024, actually, trying to bring you the most important nuggets of knowledge on this evolving topic.
Yeah, get right to the core of it.
Exactly. It's like having access to the latest scientific consensus without getting totally lost in the jargon. So let's start by setting the stage. What was the classic view of this atopic march?
Well, the atopic march, it was initially understood as a very typical sequence of allergic manifestations.
Like dominoes?
Kind of, yeah. Imagine it like a series of dominoes, atopic dermatitis, which, most people know as eczema.
Right, eczema.
Appearing in infancy, often followed by allergic rhinitis, think hay fevers, and then asthma, perhaps in later childhood. A pretty clear sequence.
And for a long time, there was, compelling epidemiological support for this, right? This straightforward progression.
Oh, definitely.
Studies from the late 20th, early 21st centuries showed significant data, like more than 50% of young kids with severe eczema would eventually develop asthma.
Yeah, the numbers were high.
And maybe 75% would get allergic rhinitis.
Oh, right.
So AD, atopic dermatitis, was widely considered that entry point.
The gateway, yeah.
Or the first clinical manifestation suggesting the skin was like the primary site for that initial allergen sensitization. It felt solid, predictable.
It really did. And what's also fascinating here is how global trends kind of played into this initial understanding.
How so?
Well, recent decades saw this significant rapid increase in the prevalence of atopic diseases globally, particularly in, say, English-speaking affluent countries.
Okay.
Yet some areas like New Zealand, the UK, they've actually seen a plateau or maybe even a decrease. While others, Mexico, Chile, Kenya, Algeria, Southeast Asia, have experienced substantial increases.
Oh, big differences.
Right. And these puzzling global variations, they really started chipping away at that neat linear atopic march idea, didn't they? Made you question if it was that simple.
Absolutely. In fact, what's truly astonishing and something that, completely overturned decades of thinking is that the classic atopic march, that predictable domino effect we all learned about it, turns out to be far less common than we imagined.
Much less common.
Imagine discovering that less than 10%, maybe even less, of allergic children actually follow that neat linear path.
It's a tiny fraction.
Recent findings, analyses of over 10,000 kids, show only a minor fraction, like as low as 3.1% or 7% in some studies, of children with allergic symptoms actually follow this traditional sequential pattern.
Yeah.
This wasn't just tweaking the model. It was a fundamental reevaluation. It really begs the question, if it's not always a march, then what is it?
That's a crucial point. And it leads us directly to what surprised me most in the research, this idea of atopic multimorbidity.
Multimorbidity, okay.
The field is increasingly moving towards this concept. It basically means allergic diseases often arise independently. They can coexist without a strict, predetermined sequence.
Okay, so not step 1, step 2, step 3 necessarily.
Exactly. It's less a single march and more a heterogeneous landscape. Different allergic disease trajectories, like multiple pathways leading to different combinations of conditions.
So if the classic march is kind of becoming a statistical outlier, what are researchers seeing now? What replaced that straightforward progression in their thinking?
Well, the concept has definitely expanded. It now includes things like IgE-mediated food allergy
Food allergies.
and eosinophilic esophagitis, EOE, as components of this allergic progression. And they're all driven fundamentally by what scientists call the type 2 or T2 inflammatory pathway.
Okay, T2. Can you unpack that a bit?
Sure. It's a specific branch of our immune system. It's designed to fight off parasites, mostly. But in allergic individuals, it mistakenly overreacts to harmless stuff like like pollen or food proteins.
Got it.
And EOE, for instance, that's often diagnosed later in the progression and has a particularly strong link with food allergy.
Interesting.
It's also now clear that asthma and allergic rhinitis, they can actually be the first allergic manifestations for some people.
Not always starting with eczema then.
No. And food allergy can also act as an independent starting point. It's not always preceded by atopic dermatitis.
So it really is like a multi-lane highway, not a single road.
Yeah.
But okay, regardless of the specific path someone takes, are there common risk factors? Things that increase the likelihood of developing multiple allergic conditions?
Absolutely. There are some clear common threads emerging from the data.
Like what?
Things like a younger age of onset of the initial allergic disease.
Okay, starting earlier is worse.
Seems to be, yeah. Also, a family history of atopy allergies running in the family.
Makes sense?
Greater severity and persistence of atopic dermatitis if it is present.
Right.
Polysensitization, that just means being sensitive to multiple allergens, not just one.
Okay.
And certain environmental factors, like living in an urban environment. These seem to be sort of universal accelerators, no matter which specific trajectory someone is on.
So we've gone from this simple March idea to this really complex multi-lane highway of allergic conditions. But the truly compelling question, the one that makes this a deep dive, is why? What's actually happening at a biological level? What drives this progression or these multiple trajectories?
Yeah, that's the heart of it, isn't it? And one of the central tenets emerging from the research is this idea of allergen exposure through a compromised epithelial barrier.
A barrier, like skin?
Primarily skin, yeah, but also potentially gut or airways.
Yeah.
It seems to be a primary route for initiating systemic allergy. Think of it like a leaky roof.
Okay.
If your skin barrier is damaged, allergens can easily get in, leading to systemic issues, throughout the body.
And that's where filigrein comes in, right? I've heard about that.
Exactly. Reduced expression or loss of function mutations in the filigrein gene, FLG, they're implicated as a major predisposing factor for atopic dermatitis.
Okay.
And then secondarily, for developing asthma, if AD is present, and allergic rhinitis. Filigrein is absolutely crucial for proper skin barrier formation, hydration, keeping that barrier intact.
It really puts a new spin on skincare, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Suddenly, that seemingly harmless dry patch on a baby's arm isn't just a minor irritation.
Right.
It's potentially a gateway. For serious allergic conditions down the line, it's quite a wake-up call.
It absolutely is. It transforms how we view prevention. It's not about being, afraid, but being informed about where the real battles might begin.
Right.
And the evidence strongly suggests that sensitization to foods like peanut or wheat can actually occur through this inflamed skin.
Not just through eating it.
Not just through the gut, no. For example, exposure to wheat or peanut-containing skin products, even peanut dust in the home environment, has been directly linked to developing these specific allergies.
Wow. Okay, so beyond the barrier breaking down, we have the immune system's response. You mentioned type 2 or Th2 inflammation and these things called alarmins. How do they fit in?
Well, that early Th2 dominant skin inflammation, it's believed to kind of set the systemic immune context. It primes the body in a way for developing those T2-driven respiratory allergies later. Yeah. And stressed epithelial barriers, they're like a distressed cell sending out an SOS signal. They release these specific alarm.
An alarm is like an alarm bell.
Exactly. Key molecules like thymexdromal lymphopoietin, TSLP is the abbreviation, and certain interleukins like IL-25 and IL-33. Think of them as immediate responders sounding the alert.
Okay, triggering the immune system.
Right. They trigger a cascade that really ramps up the immune system's T2 response. TSLP in particular is highly expressed in sensitized skin. And interestingly, deleting it can actually prevent the atopic march in mouse models.
Wow, that's significant.
It is. And this whole cascade ultimately leads to the production of other interleukins like IL-4 and IL-13 by these T2 cells. And those stimulate B cells to produce specific IgE antibodies.
Which is the classic allergy antibody.
Exactly. That's the hallmark of many allergic reactions.
And you mentioned viral triggers and this bystander effect also playing a role.
Yeah, the thinking is that the combination of this increased T2 pathway activation and viral infections, especially in early life, might sort of kickstart the whole atopic march process. Okay. And there's also this idea of a bystander effect, where maybe existing inflammation or just having elevated IgE levels could somehow make it easier to develop additional T2 responses to completely different allergens later on.
Interesting. And what's also fascinating is the huge role Environmental factors seem to play. You mentioned the exposome and the microbiome.
Yes, absolutely critical. The rapid changes in global atopic disease prevalence, they really point to a dominant role for these environmental factors. Genetics don't change that fast.
Right.
So this is where the hygiene hypothesis comes in. You've probably heard of it.
Yeah, the idea that we're too clean.
Sort of. It suggests that reduced exposure to certain microbial products like endotoxin or maybe beneficial bacteria in early infancy can actually predispose individuals to allergic diseases.
And there's evidence for this.
There is. Studies comparing genetically similar populations but with different microbial exposures, think Finnish versus Russian Karelian children, or Amish versus Hutterite farm children, they show pretty compelling support. Increased microbial exposure seems to reduce anapopy risk.
Fascinating.
And this connects directly to the microbiome. We're seeing what's called dysbiosis.
An imbalance.
Exactly. An imbalance or an unhealthy shift in the microbial communities living on our skin and in our gut. For instance, in atopic dermatitis, there's often reduced bacterial diversity and an increase in potentially harmful bacteria like Staphylococcus aureus.
Staph, right?
Yeah. And gut dysbiosis, an imbalance in the gut microbes, is also increasingly recognized as significant.
And then there's the exposome hypothesis. That sounds broader.
It is. It suggests that all the modern lifestyle environmental exposures, think microplastics, detergents, air pollution, can impact those epithelial barriers. Skin, gut, airways, potentially leading to inflammation and barrier dysfunction.
So many factors. But it's not all environment, right? Genetics still play a part. And epigenetics.
Definitely. Genetic predisposition is key. Genome-wide association studies, GWAS, show that atopic dermatitis, asthma, allergic rhinitis, they share many genetic loci. There's a strong shared genetic basis.
And the filigran gene mutations are a prime example there.
Exactly. That's a really clear one.
And epigenetics, how does that fit?
Well, this raises that important question. How much is predetermined and how much can be influenced by the environment? DNA methylation patterns in blood, which are epigenetic marks, have been linked to food allergy and asthma.
So epigenetics controls how genes are expressed without changing the DNA itself.
Precisely. It suggests that our environment can actually change how our genes function, playing a significant role in developing allergic diseases. The interplay between genes and environment, it's truly complex, a constant dance.
Okay, so with all this new, much more nuanced understanding, can we actually do anything about it? Can we halt this progression or intervene in these multiple trajectories? Let's talk interventions, starting with what seemed like a really promising simple strategy. Skin barrier repair, emollients, moisturizers.
Yeah, it seems so logical, didn't it? Preserve the barrier, prevent the problem. And the idea that preserving skin barrier function could be a primary prevention strategy, well, it's been widely explored. Some early studies did suggest that regular application of emollients, right from birth, especially in high-risk infants, could reduce the likelihood of atopic dermatitis or maybe food sensitization.
But I sense a but coming.
There is a but. Some of the more recent, larger trials, you mentioned Provenadol and Beep, they kind of threw a curveball. The results were inconsistent. Some showed no significant reduction in AD incidence, and maybe even a mild increase in risk in certain cases, which was surprising.
Wow. Why do you think that happened? Inconsistent results. Was it the study design or maybe the emollients used or?
That's precisely the challenge. It really highlights the complexity of real-world interventions versus, a clear biological mechanism in a lab.
Right.
It could be the specific type of emollient, the frequency of application, maybe even subtle genetic differences in the study populations played a role. We don't fully know.
So the best practices and the long-term impact on actually preventing the march, still uncertain for emollients.
That's still uncertain, yeah. It underscores that our body systems are rarely simple input-output machines. And just quickly, on dietary interventions, things like probiotics or prebiotics, the evidence for them protecting against food allergy or other allergic disorders is still pretty insufficient.
Okay. But now let's talk about something that did seem like a game changer. The early introduction of allergenic foods.
Ah, yes, the LEP study.
Exactly. Here's where it gets truly compelling. That landmark LEP study showed a really clear reduction in peanut allergy in high-risk infants who were fed peanut early in life.
Huge impact.
It led to entirely new recommendations for early peanut introduction. Big shift, however. Does this strategy impact the development of those other conditions like asthma or allergic rhinitis later on?
Yeah.
That's still being investigated, right?
That's the key question now. Does fixing one part affect the whole trajectory? We don't know yet.
Okay. And what about pharmacologic agents? drugs, and especially biologics. These seem to be the real cutting edge.
Absolutely. So traditional medications, your antihistamines, inhaled corticosteroids, they've shown pretty inconsistent effects on interrupting the atopic march itself or really changing the natural history of asthma.
Okay.
But the dawn of biologics, these newer drugs, they offer incredibly exciting new avenues. Why? Because they target very specific inflammatory pathways.
More targeted.
Much more targeted. For example, omalizumab. It's an anti-IgE biologic. It binds directly to that circulating IgE antibody we talked about.
Mops it up, basically.
Kind of, yeah. It's currently being investigated in a study called the PARC study. They want to see if blocking these IgE-mediated responses early in high-risk 2 to 3-year-olds can prevent or at least reduce the severity of asthma later.
That could be huge.
Potentially, yes. And then there's dupilumab. This one inhibits IL-4 and IL-13, two of those principal cytokines, those signaling molecules, in the T2 inflammatory response.
Okay.
In patients with atopic dermatitis, dupilumab has been shown to reduce that T2 inflammation, actually help repair the disrupted skin barrier, and even decrease the Staphylococcus aureus colonization.
Wow, hitting multiple key factors.
Exactly, all key risk factors for progression. Now, while it clearly interferes with major pathogenic factors, its direct effect on interrupting the atopic march in a truly preventative way, that hasn't been evaluated yet. But the implications are definitely huge.
Yeah, you can see the potential.
And another promising biologic is tezepelumab. This one targets TSLP.
Ah, the alarmin you mentioned.
That key epithelial cell trigger of T2 inflammation, exactly. It's approved for severe asthma, so we know it has a fundamental role in the atopic pathway. Interestingly, it didn't seem to improve AD severity in one trial, but its broad impact on those underlying allergic drivers still suggests significant promise for prevention efforts down the line. We're still learning. And then there's atralokinumab, an anti-IL-13 antagonist, also approved for moderate to severe AD. It reduces levels of things like fractional exhaled nitric oxide, a measure of airway inflammation, and total blood IgE. So again, targeting key allergic inflammation markers.
So lots of activity in biologics. But the big challenge...
The big challenge for all of them, really, is whether they truly inhibit the progression of the atopic march or if they just suppress the symptoms while the underlying process continues.
Right, a crucial difference.
A very crucial difference. We're going to need long-term studies with extended observation periods to really answer that question.
Makes sense. And beyond medications, what about immunotherapy? Allergy shots or drops?
Yeah, specific allergen immunotherapy, particularly for allergic rhinitis, has shown some preliminary positive results. It seems to reduce the risk of later asthma development in children, so that's another fascinating avenue being explored.
Okay. This really raises an important question for the future, thinking about personalized medicine. How can we accurately identify which individuals are most at risk, and maybe even predict which specific trajectory of allergic disease they might follow?
That's the million-dollar question, and this is where biomarkers come in.
Biomarkers.
Yeah.
Measurable indicators in the body.
Exactly. Measurable indicators. Researchers are exploring potential biomarkers, things like specific fatty acid binding proteins, FAB-FA they're called, in the skin and blood, or variations in genes like toll-like receptor 2, TLR2, or levels of certain interleukins, maybe IL-17 or IL-23.
Like biological road signs.
That's a great analogy, potentially telling us who's heading where and maybe how fast.
So to truly personalize prevention, diagnosis, treatment, future research needs to integrate like big data approaches.
Absolutely. We need multi-omic studies analyzing proteins, RNA, lipids, everything in infants before and after the onset of atopic dermatitis.
Get a baseline and see what changes.
Exactly. It also involves sequential immune profiling, tracking serology, cytokine profiles, how specific B cells and T cells evolve in infant blood over time.
Wow.
And microbiome investigations studying the skin and gut microbiomes right from birth. Plus, considering maternal factors like how the mode of delivery might influence atopy risk, it's about building a really complete picture right from the very beginning.
A massive undertaking.
It is. So, the big picture here, the long-term vision, is really clear. If these incredible new molecules, these biologics, truly deliver on preventing the atopic march,
If they work,
then the next hurdle is going to be cost. Let's be honest, these are expensive therapies.
very expensive.
So we'll need some serious cost-benefit analyses, weighing that high price tag against just how effective they truly are in the long run. But the ultimate goal, the sort of holy grail, is to move towards predicting and intervening in allergic diseases before they even fully manifest.
Imagine that. preventing the problem before it starts.
That's the dream.
And that brings us towards the end of this deep dive. We've taken, I think, a really fascinating journey into the evolving concept of the atopic march, moving from that simplistic linear progression
Yeah, the dominoes.
to this much more nuanced understanding of atopic multimorbidity. We've seen how skin barrier dysfunction, that initial point of entry, T2 inflammation, environmental factors like our microbiome, they're all critical players, and how these new biologic treatments offer truly exciting possibilities.
It's really no longer just about atopic dermatitis leading neatly to asthma. It's a much more complex interplay. Food allergies, eosinophilic esophagitis, they play significant roles too, influenced by genetics, our microbiome, even the air we breathe. It's genuinely a complete rethinking of how these conditions develop.
So wrapping up, what really stands out to you when you think about this complex journey of allergic disease? And maybe looking forward, what do you think is the next big aha moment? The next breakthrough we might uncover in unraveling its mysteries, guiding us to even more targeted prevention?
That's a great question, I think.
Because this feels like just the beginning, right? Understanding how we can truly personalize the fight against allergies.